It was just 2 months ago that neo-Nazis marched through the streets in Charlottesville, Virginia. They were protesting the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue in Emancipation Park. They held torches. They chanted things like, "Jews will not replace us." One counter-protester, Heather Heyer, died after police say a white supremacist rammed his car into a crowd of people. And this was the second incident of the summer. Just as the city was picking itself back up, the white supremacist returned over this last weekend. You might not have heard about it, might not have seen it everywhere. This time, they did it without warning. It was a little bit smaller, and it got less pushback. Alex Miller joins us now because back in August, you went down, you met this rabbi who had encountered all of this hatred, and they're actually in a unique situation right now in their community, specifically the Jewish community. Yeah, the Jewish community is observing the holiday of Sukkot, and because of that, they could have been in real danger this weekend, and that's because Jews observe Sukkot outdoors. They eat their meals, and some even sleep in this temporary shelter that they built. And that's where the Jewish community was on Saturday night. They were eating dinner as these white supremacists started this rally. Richard Spencer and dozens of his supporters marched to Emancipation Park carrying those tiki torches. They stopped by the Robert E. Lee statue that we now know, and it's covered now, though, in a black tarp. The rally supposedly lasted around like 5 to 10 minutes. And the men were dressed in that alt-right style uniform, the white shirts and the khaki pants, and they were chanting things like, "You will not replace us. The South will rise again, and we will be back." The police followed them after the rally was over because it only lasted around 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that they got on those buses and didn't wander off anywhere else in the area. So I spoke with Rabbi Rachel Schmelkin, who I spoke with when I went to visit Charlottesville about 2 months ago, and we talked about how the events unfolded from the perspective of the Jewish community there and how they're coping now with this. It's happened 3 times. Let's just talk about what the events were like for you guys. Were you outside?
Yeah, we were having a Sukkot celebration.
Did you see people go by?
No, I wouldn't have necessarily known that it was happening if it wasn't for a texting group that I'm in with other clergy.
And this one was different because you didn't have warning like you did last time?
Right. We were all caught by surprise.
So you were outside in the sukkah. You were, pretty close to the street. Did you immediately fear for your safety?
I wouldn't say that I was immediately afraid. I was really trying to piece together what was going on. And my first priority was just to figure out what the next step should be and how I could protect my community. As soon as I heard from my clergy colleagues that this was going on, I told them we happen to be outside of the synagogue right now in our sukkah celebrating this holiday. And I didn't even ask them to come, actually, but they just said they were coming.
And they stood guard for you?
They stood outside and kept watch, and I think it was partly to keep watch and be, human guards, but I also think that it was just a pastoral presence of care and concern.
How does it feel? This is now the 3rd time in just a few months that this is back.
It's sad. It's scary. And, there's been a lot of, Charlottesville has become a hashtag, and people say post Charlottesville this or after Charlottesville that. Charlottesville is still happening. And this is potentially going to be an ongoing issue for us to have to deal with.
When we spoke back in August, we talked about the community coming together, to overcome these people that keep coming into your town. Do you feel like the community is prepared for this to keep happening?
I think we have an incredible community here. Part of what I think hasn't gotten out there enough is that, yes, there were non-Jewish clergy standing outside of our synagogue, and there were local activists, but some of those local activists were Jews. We're showing up for ourselves and for others. If, God forbid, there were a rally happening close to an African-American church or close to the mosque, I know the clergy would show up there and the local activists would show up there. I know that the Jewish community would show up there too. So this time it happened to be that we were the ones that were vulnerable, but we're also ready to act if others are vulnerable too.
Beyond this bigotry, Alex, the thing that enrages me is they're talking about the South will rise again. Just so you know, these are also Southerners. They also live there, you know, and many of these people are from out of town. It's like, don't come here and talk about this, right?
Well, and Charlottesville is a really diverse place because they've got the University of Virginia there, so it's become this melting pot in itself in the South.
So the mayor knows that he could potentially face this again. And I listened to a podcast earlier in the week, and I guess the local ordinance is that if less than 50 people were there, then you don't have to get a permit. But he's considering some legal options.
Yeah, he tweeted earlier this week that he was going to be looking at his legal options. Some people from the city council were also trying to weigh their options. It turns out the Charlottesville Commonwealth attorney said he's not going to press charges. He announced that early today. I just want to read you part of the statement. He said, "It's not enough that people feel a general threat, even a completely and understandable justified feeling." He went on to say there has to be specific circumstances that would cause people who are in present and a legitimate fear of death or bodily harm. So you have the way to charge them would be very, very narrow, even as he called it repugnant as this ideology is.
It reminds you that these people, even after the cameras leave, still need support and both morale and everything that goes with that, right? So
yeah, the synagogue's raising money because they have to cover their security costs now.
Stay strong.